Welcome to the Plutus Foundation webinar series. I'm Harlan Landes, Executive Director of the Plutus Foundation, and I'm really happy about what we're going to talk about today because we have Wendy Mays, and Wendy is from House of Phi, and she is a semi-retired lawyer, and she has been a realtor. And this is going to be a great conversation about what real estate is like right now in today's environment due to COVID and the economy and everything else that's going on. There is so much to think about with real estate right now. A lot of people's plans were put on hold, whether it was buying or selling, and we want to figure out exactly what we can do right now with real estate and where some opportunities might be, and what some of the obstacles and difficulties might be when it comes to buying your first home or investing in real estate. There's so much to talk about. So Wendy, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this as well. I think like you said, there are just a lot of questions and a lot of unknowns and people are concerned. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Great. So what has COVID done to the real estate market right now? And I know that's a broad question, but
yeah.
what is going on? What does the industry look like right now?
Well, I mean, it really depends kind of what we're talking about. If we're talking about it in a more practical sense of, like, for instance, if you're a seller, what does that look like? Well, people are concerned about people being in their homes. So if you have to sell right now, what does that look like? How do people view your homes? How do you get the interest from buyers to come and view your homes? You know, are realtors, do they have specific things that they have to do mandated by the state or even suggestions by their local associations? So in a practical sense, it's different, and it also is different depending on where you are in the country, because every single state, every single county, every single city is in a different stage of this pandemic. And so it really is going to be location dependent. And then from there, you have to look at what's going on, you know, what's mandated, what's ethical, then, you know, then there's layers upon layers of considerations. If they are allowing live tours, what does that look like? Do people have to wear booties? Are there rules? Who buys the booties? So there's just lots of considerations as far as, you know, how it's being affected right now. And that's just talking about the practical side of things.
Well, you're in California, so maybe you can talk a little bit about what the situation is in your state. And I know not every state is the same, but there are probably things that can apply.
Yeah, so as far as market-wide in general, what we're seeing is still a ton of buyers, especially in where I am in Southern California and San Diego. It's not that there's not a lack of buyers. There's still people who want to buy. The problem is there is a shrinkage in the inventory because sellers are maybe putting the brakes on and saying, you know, I don't know what's going on right now. I don't know if I want people in my house. Maybe I'm going to wait to see what happens with the market. So the inventory has shrunk, and so there aren't a lot of homes for sale, but there are buyers. So that's good. So that's good for sellers. If you're in a situation where you must sell, you know that more than likely your house is probably going to sell in a short period of time. We're getting almost 100% market value for homes, and they're not staying on the market for very long. So if you're a seller who has to sell, you're probably in an okay spot, but that's going to be location dependent. So you need to really know what it's like in your own particular area.
So, sorry, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, on the practical side of things right now, as far as what we're in, we're still in the early stage of stage 2. And so they're just now starting to roll out. These are going to be some of the guidelines that are going to be required. There's going to be rules that are required for showing a home. They're about where they have to be placed, who has to be notified of them, and all of those are going to be able to be found on the Department of Real Estate's websites. And I have some links that maybe we can provide later your state will likely have the very same thing, kind of guidelines of where we are, where your state is, and if there's guidelines, what those are, and potentially what they will be once you get to the stage where physical showings can happen again.
How much of that does the buyer need to know about versus the realtor?
But well, the buyer needs to know too, because the buyer may think that, okay, well, I can't get into a house. How am I going to know if I like this house? I have, we're moving. I need to get in somewhere. How am I going to know if I'm going to like a house? So right now they've got a lot of virtual tours going on. They have some realtors are allowed to, depending on where you are, you're allowed to go and do a live stream tour of the house, so you can be on with your client and touring the home, so the potential buyer can ask specific questions while they're there on the property. If it's to a point where they're allowing live showings, they're going to need to be aware of what the rules are so that they can be prepared for whatever they need, whether that's if they're going to need to have, the booties and the, whether they're not allowed to touch anything in the home, that sort of thing. They'll need to be aware of what the rules are as well. So they'll need to either have a realtor who is familiar with those rules and goes over those rules with them, or if they're not represented, to make sure that they've educated themselves about that.
So from a buyer's perspective, it sounds like this could be a good time, just given that there are so many, from a seller's perspective, this could be a good time given that there are so many buyers looking to buy right now.
Yeah. And again, I would say that really depends on the market. So you want to know what your market looks like. Normal inventory, an equilibrium in inventory is when a particular area has about 3 months worth of inventory of homes available for potential buyers. For instance, in California, where we are in San Diego right now, there's about a month's worth, which that obviously is a seller's market. Now, if there were 6 months worth of inventory, that's more of a buyer's market. Buyers may still be able to get good deals. It really is going to be where they're doing their research. Is the seller anxious to sell? Is that why they're selling right now during a pandemic? So there may be room for negotiation, even though it's still considered a seller's market.
Would you, I would be nervous buying a home with nothing more than a virtual tour to go by. Is it safe to do this? Are there other considerations? Should people wait until they can see a property in person?
If you're not comfortable with the process, you shouldn't buy, no matter what. But if you have to, you're still going to be allowed to have the inspections that you want to have. So you're going to have a professional who is walking that property looking for issues. You're going to have a pest inspection. Your realtor in California, your realtor is required to walk the home and look for any potential issues as well. So it is fairly safe, and the seller is required to disclose any known issues or defects as well. So there's protections in place for people who are buying and have that concern, even though they might not get into the home initially when they're making their offer.
And in terms of the buyers who are out there now, are many of them comfortable with this process, or are we seeing that buyers are shying away right now because of this?
I think that this has really opened up a lot of possibilities. And I don't think that people are shying away as maybe we thought that they would. Like, this has really kind of opened our eyes to the future of real estate. I think that's my opinion, that this is probably going to be one of the ways that we continue to do real estate in the future.
So just like for business, a lot of companies are realizing that maybe they can do a lot more work remotely.
Yeah.
This is opening opportunities for people to sell in different ways and to buy in different ways.
Absolutely. If you had asked me maybe 3, 4 years ago if I would have ever bought a home without ever stepping foot on the property, I would have said no.
Mhm.
We did this last year. We as real estate investors ourselves bought property without ever having stepped foot in it ourselves. But it's because we did our due diligence. It's because we hired people who knew what they were doing. We hired the experts to be the feet on the ground to do the work for us. So I think this really is just a different way of doing things if you're comfortable doing it that way.
So how about for the first time home buyer where they've, the family is ready or the
Mm-hmm.
individual is ready to move forward. The quarantine happened. It sounds almost like what's happening right now. Some people should probably sit out and wait just because they
Mm-hmm.
don't have the experience. Is there any way for first time home buyers to look at this and really feel comfortable?
I think so. Again, it goes back to really being knowledgeable and doing your due diligence and being aware of what opportunities are out there for first time home buyers, but also being comfortable with the process and working with someone who is familiar with, special considerations out there for first home buyers. It's going to be a scary process. This is something new. This is likely the biggest purchase that you're going to make in your entire life. So just asking questions, feeling comfortable with the process, not feeling rushed to make a decision, making sure that you feel comfortable with the decision, all of those things.
Is there anything else that first time home buyers really need to think about right now?
I think if I were a first time home buyer right now and I didn't have to move, I might wait. I might wait just because there are so many unknowns right now. Um, we're seeing unemployment just skyrocket, just crazy skyrocket, and we don't know what that is going to do. We don't know if that's going to lead to foreclosures, which typically mean that there's going to be opportunities to buy homes at a discount. So we don't know these things. And if I were going to be a first time homebuyer making my first big time purchase, knowing that this is going to be something that is providing for the future of my family, I might wait. I might wait until I can physically be on the property. I might wait so that I can get a good deal because it is the first time. But the other side is that if you find something that is just your dream house and it's a good price and you've run the numbers and it just meets everything and you feel comfortable with the people that you're working with and you know you're going to stay in the home long term, then you should do that as well. It really it's a very personal thing.
I know there are a lot of unknowns right now, but you brought up the issue of unemployment
Yeah.
and it's skyrocketing
Yeah.
and we don't know if everyone's going to get back to jobs or not. And
Right.
what what I know we can't predict, but it seems to me with unemployment like this for an
Mm-hmm.
extended period of time, what's the possibility for the market to look like a year from now or a year and a
Yeah.
half?
I think a lot of that is going to depend upon what the federal government does to help home buyers out. Um, this is a very different situation than what we saw in the last market crash. In 2008, things happened for very different reasons. Before this pandemic, we had a very good economy. We had really wonderful interest rates. Interest rates on homes are still at historic lows. The issue is going to be unemployment and what is the fallout of that. Does that mean that there's going to be a rise in foreclosures? Well, if the government steps in and minimizes that, will it be as big of an impact? That's really the unknown right now because there hasn't been anything put in place other than this initial provision in this first CARES Act where it's allowed forbearance for a certain period of time and protections for certain types of loans. Um, but that's only a forbearance. There's nothing that changes the terms of people's loans right now. So even though someone is maybe allowed to forbear their payments for a couple of months, there could be a balloon payment coming in just about a week or so. What is that person going to do? There's nothing in place right now that says what's going to happen. It's all dependent on the servicer. So until we know what the government is going to do, whether or not there's provisions in another act, we don't know. It could be a catastrophic situation where we're looking at a lot of foreclosures. It could be something different. We just don't know right now. I'm of the mind that it's one of those things that we really do need to wait and see about.
So for the servicers, and just from a practical perspective, with the federal government offering forbearance assistance, how is that working with the servicers? Are they making that effective? Are they responding?
Every single servicer is different. And that's why it's important for you as the mortgage holder, as the borrower, to be in communication with your particular servicer. I found some links that I'll provide later as well that really go over, what you should do depending on the type of loan you have. So first, it depends on what type of loan you have, whether it's like a government insured loan, like a VA or an FHA, etc. And then it also depends on your servicer, because your servicer does not have to put maybe this forbearance period at the end of your note. They don't have to necessarily restructure your payments. They don't have to do any of that right now. So it's very, very imperative that you contact your servicer, know what type of note you have, and figure out what is going to happen after this forbearance period ends.
And can you just, since there's a lot of terms going on here, and there's probably a lot of new people, people new to real estate who might not be familiar with some of these. So first of all, forbearance. What does that mean, and how can someone take advantage of that?
It's kind of like a pause button or a postponement. So the government has said, okay, we will allow you to forbear or postpone your mortgage payment for 60 days after, I believe it's March 18th. So for 2 months, if you can't pay your mortgage, you are allowed to not do that and not have it affect your credit negatively. Beyond that, it's up to the servicer what happens next. So the servicer could say, okay, it's been 60 days. That 2 months worth of payments is now due on top of your third month payment.
And that would be a balloon payment, right?
That would be a balloon payment. So a balloon is what it sounds like, a big amount. It could be that. They could also say, we understand what's going on. We want to work with you. We don't want this house back. So we're going to spread these 2 months of payments over the rest of the note, or over a 5-year, 10-year period. They could also say, okay, we're going to take this 2 months that we skipped, but we're going to put it at the end of the note. So instead of your note being paid off in 30 years from now, it's going to be paid off in 32.
And does the borrower, the homeowner, have any way to talk to the servicer? And perhaps if the servicer is saying, well, we're looking for a balloon payment, can the borrower say, I would really prefer to pay this over time? Is that even an option, or are you just stuck with what the servicer says?
Right now, that is not, there are no protections. Right now, that's not, it really is up to the servicer.
Okay.
So whoever you're paying, and who the servicer is whoever you're paying your mortgage to. So maybe originally when you got the loan and you bought it, you saw that your documents were HSBC, but now you pay your mortgage and it's to someone else, a different name company. The person who you're sending your payment to every single month, that is your servicer. So whoever you go online to pay it every single month, or whoever you send a check to in the mail every single month, that's your servicer. That's who you need to be talking to.
Now, is that because the banks will initiate the mortgages and then sell them to other companies?
Yeah, or they have agreements that this is who will be servicing our loans.
Okay. So it's good to know who you're dealing with, and sometimes it might
Absolutely.
not be apparent at the beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
So here's a question from Kathleen on Facebook. Wouldn't changing the loan terms or loan forgiveness impact the economy as well?
That's a good question. I don't know that it would affect the economy so much as it may, in my opinion, it would affect the economy in a good way, because that means that this person now doesn't have to scramble, that this person now doesn't have to worry about selling their house and finding a new place to live, that they're not going to hold on to their money, that they're going to be able to know and feel safe in spending their money. So I think in that way, that it provides the security that we're looking for. We don't want people being afraid, because that is what, causes bad things to happen in the economy, when people want to hold on to their money and are afraid.
So if with this temporary forbearance, what if the situation, everybody's situation is going to be different. Some people are going to be back to work. Some people are not. Is there any talk of what the federal government can do to continue to help people beyond what's going on right now?
Well, I think they're up to maybe 5 different new proposals, and some of them include provisions in them dealing with, what to do with mortgages, what to do with rents, what are renters' rights, those sorts of things, as well as are they going to subsidize mortgage companies who are not getting their mortgage payments? So it really just depends on which version of these proposals both parties can agree on and what eventually passes. So I think it is important to kind of not necessarily be glued to the TV or anything listening to these, because there are a bunch out there floating around right now, but just have that in the back of your mind that there probably is going to be something else coming. We just don't know what it is yet.
Is there any way for citizens to get involved and maybe just influence?
Yeah, it's always good to, if you are concerned, if you're hurting financially, if you have other opinions about what should happen, you need to be getting that to your your Congress persons, your senators, your representatives, and letting them know, because they don't know unless we tell them.
How about real estate investors, perhaps people who own property and are collecting rents right now? Are there any
Yeah.
protections for them as they're perhaps losing some rent payments?
Not that I'm aware of currently. I have not seen anything yet. I know that at least 2 of the proposals that I've seen talk about that and providing some relief for landlords, but I haven't seen anything official. So nothing's passed yet. So that is something to have your ear to the ground about. I do think it's important for anyone who is an investor and does have tenants to be aware of what the laws are right now for whether or not you can evict someone. And that's going to vary by state and by local ordinances as well. So I think that's imperative for people to know, and start having conversations. If your tenants are having issues, it's good. It's a good thing to have those conversations with them now. Figure out, okay, is this person likely going to be going back to work or not? Is there something that we can do short of, having them not pay rent for 6 months and living here? Maybe you get creative and you figure out a way to, buy them out of their lease. I don't know. I'm coming up with ideas,
Yeah.
but I think there's,
Yeah.
I think there's ways that if you're, people are hurting. a lot of people are hurting, and it doesn't benefit anybody to, just be like, this is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to be. Too bad. It really is beneficial to communicate with your tenants if they're having a hard time. Figure out a solution. Figure out, what you both are going to do that's within what's allowed.
Yeah, this must be a hard time for renters. I'm sure some are fearing the situation. If they don't pay their rent for 3 months, what could possibly happen to them?
Right.
Does a landlord have any moral obligation, do you think?
I think there are moral obligations as a landlord. We've been fortunate in that we haven't had any issues with our tenants yet, but we have made sure to tell our property manager that we want to know if someone's struggling. We will figure out what to do. I don't want to kick somebody out on the street, if they don't have anywhere to go, but at the same time, this is our livelihood as well. So if that were to happen, we'll have to figure out something that is beneficial for everybody and isn't cold and heartless.
So for the landlords, I think this is an interesting time because over the last few years, it seems a lot of people have become real estate investors, especially when there's like Airbnb.
Oh, yeah.
And now these owners are realizing that they didn't plan for this loss of rental income or ongoing renter income.
A lot of people dropped into real estate investing because they saw it as an opportunity. But, the question has always been, what are you going to do if the laws change? Well, we didn't have a big laws change. We had a pandemic happen that just crushed the Airbnb market. And so there are people who are suffering. And I think a lot of that has to do with, not having the foresight to think ahead of what is my worst case scenario? What is our plan B, C, and D? And I think as a real estate investor, you really have to think about that. What is going to happen if I can no longer Airbnb this property? If I have a mortgage on this property, can I rent it long term to somebody and still at least break even until, the tide changes? And if you haven't done those sorts of, plans or thinking or calculations, then you probably shouldn't be investing.
And I don't know if this is beyond kind of the scope of what we're talking about, but is Airbnb or VRBO or any of these companies that kind of facilitate these things, are they helping their investors at all?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't heard that at all. I could be wrong, but I haven't heard that at all.
And how do you think this will change the landscape for real estate investors over the course of the next few years?
I think it really depends on what your goal is as an investor, and what sort of investing that you do. So for instance, we are long-term buy and hold, and we care more about our properties cash flowing and providing us with monthly income. So our mortgage on the property is far less than the rents that we're able to get. And in the area that we invest, rents are fairly stable. Homes do not appreciate very much at all. So we're not concerned about big fluctuations in the market as far as home values go. If you're a flipper, then that's a bigger consideration. And so you have to think, okay, do I wait? Do I wait maybe 6 months or so to see if there is sort of maybe a crash or at least a fluctuation? Do I press the brakes for a little bit? If I'm an Airbnb, do I sell and get out of it, or do I switch to buy and hold and get in long-term renters and do it differently? So I think it really depends upon what your objective is for your investments.
Is now, I know rates have been low. Is now a good time to refinance?
Yes, rates are at historic lows. So if you are able to refinance and it makes sense based upon what your current rate is, then yes, it is a great time. The one thing that is happening is that the mortgage companies are kind of constricting right now. And so the just like we saw during the last recession, we saw mortgage companies kind of tighten up their lending criteria. So wanting higher credit scores, wanting better credit, that sort of thing, wanting larger down payments. That's the sort of thing that we're seeing right now. So if you are able to refinance, then it's a good time to do it. But just be aware that the requirements to do it are probably going to be a little bit more than they were before.
So they are tightening up a bit, just like they did
Right. Well,
the last time.
this is all a big unknown for them too, and
Hmm.
so they're choosing to hold on to their money and not take as many risks as maybe they were willing to take a year ago when things were just, everybody was happy.
Would you say that this is a credit crunch, kind of like the last time, or are we not there yet, or are we not even worried about that?
I don't know that we're there yet. But we could be, but again, that kind of really just depends on what happens in the next few months or so.
So, in the event that unemployment and restricted credit creates a real estate crash, what should we be looking for? Are there opportunities for people, and how can we deal with that as homeowners?
I think there will be opportunities for people if that happens. Again, there'll be opportunities depending on what your goals are. So if your goal is to buy, then it's likely that you're going to see lower home prices, which provides an opportunity for you to maybe afford a home in an area that's a high cost of living like San Diego that you maybe wouldn't have been able to afford before. So I think that it's a good time to really kind of just sit back and prepare. So if you know that maybe 6 months from now things might happen and I might want to buy, then now's the time for you to make sure that your credit is right, to make sure you have all the things that you're going to need to apply for a loan, that you are, taking care of what's on your credit report, those sorts of things. So I think it's a good time for preparation, if that's even in the back of your mind. Or maybe you're military and you know that even though there's kind of no travel orders right now, but it's possible and likely that you might have something happen in the next 6 months. Well, you might want to go ahead and sell now, since your value of your home is probably as high as it's going to be if a crash comes. So might be the time to sell for others.
Is there anything else that that any homeowner should do right now, or a potential home buyer, to prepare for what might come in the next year?
Other than just getting ready, know what your obligations are, making sure that you have your safety nets in place, because a lot of us, even though we may have employment now, we might not in 6 months. So just I think we're in a time of preparation, and I know that part of getting like the stimulus money and all of that is to get people to spend money, but I don't know that that's a good idea right now. I think it's a good time for us to store our cash reserves, to build up our cash reserves, and just kind of wait a little bit to see what happens.
Okay, so building up cash reserves. Anything else to prep for a home purchase? If you're looking to buy maybe within 6 months or a year.
Yeah, if you're someone who knows that they're going to buy, it might be a tad early to talk to a lender, but if you're getting closer, maybe on the 3 month sides, you really do want to talk to a lender ahead of time, making sure that you are approved, so that you know what you can buy, how much you can buy, what you're going to need. Maybe they'll tell you that you aren't quite ready, that you need to do a few things before you're ready. So I think that that's one of the things that some people get so excited, and maybe first-time home buyers get so excited about, oh, we're going to buy a house. I'm so excited. This is what I want. I love this house. And then you sit down with the lender, and the lender says, yeah, I'm sorry, like this is what you can afford, and it's not anything like what you want. It's crushing. So know what you can afford. I think, and this goes back to first-time home buyers as well. One thing that I forgot to mention, and I don't know, at least when I was talking to my daughter who's contemplating buying a house, her first house in the next year, she didn't realize that the mortgage was more than, your mortgage payment was more than what you owe the bank. So she wasn't aware of property taxes and homeowners insurance and HOA and private mortgage insurance, or PMI, when you don't put at least 20% down, which really does affect how much you have to pay on your home every month, and it affects what you can afford. So those are the sorts of things that you should be doing preparing to buy a house, is just really educating yourself on what it really means to own a home, what are all the expenses that go into owning a home. And also, this also goes back to first-time home buyers. There's tons of programs out there for first-time home buyers as well. And those are sometimes local, like city governments and counties, et cetera. And they have all different sorts of programs for like down payment assistance and that sort of thing. So this is a time of educating yourself as well in preparation for what you're going to be doing.
So in terms of support for first-time home buyers, what kind of programs are there and how do they help?
It depends on where you live. What you want to do is Google for your city or for your county first-time home buyer programs, and you'll see what comes up. Sometimes there's down payment assistance. Sometimes it's a grant where it's free money. Sometimes it's loan assistance where it's a special loan so that you don't have to come out so much out of pocket. So it really just depends, and you have to look at your specific area.
And what else? I think that really covers just about everything. There is one more question that we have, though, for a first-time home buyer specifically. How do you find the right realtor and lender? How do you go through that process? Is there one you want to talk to first? Is there, do you just, like the assistant programs, you just go on Google and search for names in your city? How do you find the right resources?
So everybody knows a realtor, right? We all have a friend or a cousin or a family member who's a realtor. I would say those are not the people that you necessarily go to. Okay, what you want is, you definitely want to interview more than one person. You not only want to be able to connect with this person on a personal level, because you are going to be interacting with them about important stuff, but you want to make sure that they know your market. And so they're sharing with you information about what your current market is. They can often provide you with information on the first-time home buyer programs. Excuse me. They also sometimes have lenders that they work with that can give you, like special discounts because they work together. So I always suggest interviewing at least 3 different people to work with. And picking the one that really addresses your needs and your wants, and who comes with the most information.
Okay, that's great. Is there anything else that you think is relevant right now in this period of time for anyone, whether they're looking to sell or to buy or to invest?
I think we're living in even though we've got this crazy stuff going on, I think we're living in one of the most wonderful times in history where we have so much information at our fingertips. We can research just about anything, if there's things that you want to know about interest rates, or there's things that you want to know about a particular realtor, or even a house, a history of a house. There's just so much information out there at your fingertips, and it's just a shame to not take advantage of that when it's right there. And for the most part, it's all free. So I think that's the one thing that I'm grateful for to be living in this time, is that there's just so much that we can do that we weren't even able to do like when we were young. We had Encyclopedia Britannica. Well, this internet thing was not around. So there's just so much out there. You can look for homes all the way across the country. You can look for homes in other countries. And it's just a really exciting time, I think.
I like that you mentioned that there are free resources out there. Is there any time where it would make sense for someone new to real estate to buy a course online or to buy books? What kind of research might help someone? And is it worth it to spend money on something, given that we know that there's a lot of free information out there?
I don't know that that's necessary for a home buyer, like a normal home buyer or home seller who's maybe looking to buy their residence or sell their residence. I think there's enough free information out there for someone who's in that situation. If you are a real estate investor, however, I think it's imperative that you educate yourself about real estate investing. And there are a ton of books out there. I've bought a ton of books, but also there are other free resources as well. There's podcasts that talk about real estate investing. There's audiobooks. There's webinars. There's people on YouTube. I think it's just really important for that to do more than just, browsing on the internet here and there. I know that's the one big mistake that we made during the last crash, is that we jumped into the real estate investing market and we didn't know what we were doing. And not educating ourselves is one of our biggest regrets.
So along those lines, when it comes to finding information online and educating ourselves, how can people find you online?
Yeah, so my website is House of Fi, which stands for House of Financial Independence. I'm also on YouTube, basically under the same moniker for everything, House of FI. And yeah, I'm on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram, but mostly Facebook and YouTube are where I am at lately.
Anything encouraging about the future that you might want to share as a way to just keep everything on a positive note?
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I really am. I know that this is a hard time for everyone, but I think history does repeat itself, and this is going to be hard for a time, but we will rebuild and we will grow. And the market, if it crashes, it won't happen forever. The market always goes up. So I just want people to know that this is temporary. This is not forever. If you're hurting, it's not forever. And if you're waiting for opportunities, I think opportunities are going to come.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, Harlan.
Yeah, this was great. This is our last webinar in our current series. We might be starting up again with some more informational stuff in the next month or so. So make sure you're subscribed to Plutus Foundation. Go to our website, plutusfoundation.org. Enter your email address so you get notifications of everything that's going on. Follow us on Facebook, which is where you're watching this right now, unless you're listening in the podcast. And make sure you stay subscribed to the podcast as well. So thanks again, Wendy.
You're welcome.